Good evening, dear listener. Welcome to this quiet corner of storytelling where mysteries unfold like the petals of a rose at dawn, slowly, gently, without hurry or fuss. Make yourself comfortable now. Perhaps you have a warm cup of tea cradled in your hands, the steam rising in lazy curls, carrying the faint scent of chamomile or Earl Grey. Let your shoulders soften, your breathing slow. Tonight, we shall spend a peaceful hour with Miss Jane Marple, unraveling a small puzzle in her beloved village. If these gentle tales bring you calm and rest, do consider subscribing for more soothing mysteries to ease you towards sleep. And now, let us begin. In the shadow of the Austrian Alps, Salzburg during the festival was the perfect stage for tragedy. Elegant villas overlooked the Salzach River, and where champagne corks popped and distant piano notes floated on crisp mountain air. Maestro Victor Lang, the celebrated conductor, was found dead in his private box at the Festspiel house. Poisoned by a rare cipher-scented liqueur, his baton still clutched in rigid fingers. The police called it suicide, a man broken by scandal. But Hercule Poirot, attending a performance of Mozart, saw a meticulously rehearsed performance. Someone in this theater of wealth and music was playing the role of innocent, the role of murderer. The curtain rises. Chapter 1. The stage is set. The Festspiel house stood carved into the Mönchsberg rock, like a secret theater of the gods, its pale stone facade glowing under floodlights, while the Salzach River murmured below. Inside, Art Deco elegance reigned supreme. Crystal chandeliers tinkled with every draught. Polished mahogany banisters gleamed under soft amber light, and the faint scent of hothouse lilies drifted through velvet-curtained corridors, mingling with expensive Worth perfume and the distant curl of Cuban cigar smoke from the gentleman's lounge. It was August 1952, the Salzburg Festival at its glittering peak. Post-war Europe had rediscovered refinement. Silk evening gowns rustled against crisp linen napkins. Dry champagne sparkled in smooth crystal flutes, and the warm drawing rooms of the attached villa quarters glowed with firelight, while the alpine chill pressed coldly against tall windows. Grandfather clocks chimed the quarter hours with solemn precision. Leather-bound programs lay open on side tables. Everything was arranged for beauty, for order, for performance. Then the curtain jerked sideways. During the intermission of Der Rosenkavalier, an usher discovered Maestro Victor Lang in his private box on the first tier. He sat slumped forward in the velvet armchair, evening dress immaculate, white tie askew only by the faintest degree. His right hand still gripped the ebony baton as though conducting the silence itself. A half-empty glass of Kirsch liqueur rested on the marble ledge beside him. The almond scent was sharp, almost medicinal, cutting through the lingering perfume of roses. His lips carried the faintest bluish tint. A single sheet of paper protruded from his breast pocket. Scrawled in his own hand, the ink still faintly glossy. The note read, "The Salzburg Cipher has undone me. Forgiveness is impossible. Farewell." The local police arrived within 20 minutes, their heavy boots thudding on parquet floors, and they examined the scene with brisk efficiency. No signs of struggle, the box door locked from inside, the terrace door ajar, letting in a thin stream of chill night air. Suicide, they declared almost at once. A man of genius, recently plagued by rumors of financial irregularity and a disputed attribution in an 18th century score. The pressure, they said, had finally broken him. Hercule Poirot had been seated in the stalls, third row center, his small frame almost lost among the fur stoles and starched collars. He had come for Mozart, for the clean mathematical beauty of the music, for the satisfaction of hearing order made audible. Instead, he found himself watching a different composition entirely. He rose quietly as the audience milled in confusion, touching his magnificent moustache thoughtfully till he approached the inspector, a stout man named Gruber, who smelled faintly of coffee and pipe tobacco. Pardon, Monsieur l'Inspecteur, Poirot began in his precise, accented French. But Hercule Poirot would very much like to observe the stage before it is cleared. Gruber recognized the name. A polite nod, a murmured, "Of course, Monsieur Poirot," and the little Belgian was permitted entry. The private box felt smaller now, intimate, almost claustrophobic. The fire warmth of the corridor contrasted sharply with the icy draught from the terrace. Poirot noted the silver tray, the crystal glass still bearing a faint lipstick trace. No, not lipstick, a residue of the liqueur itself. He bent close. The almond odor was pronounced, unnatural in its intensity. Kirsch should smell of cherries first, almonds second. This was reversed, and he straightened, tilting his egg-shaped head. "Observe, mon ami," he murmured to the empty air. "This performance has been most carefully arranged." The cast, as in any well-made play, assembled almost of their own accord in the villa's green drawing-room. First came Eleanor Lang, the widow, still in her black silk evening gown, a single strand of pearls gleaming at her throat. She moved with the grace of a former soprano accustomed to spotlights. Her kid gloves were smooth against a lace handkerchief that dabbed at perfectly dry eyes. Chanel No. 5 preceded her like a signature. "He was my entire world," she said, voice low and musical. The shoulders shook appropriately. Yet no tears fell. Poirot watched from beside the marble fireplace. The mask slips. Did you see it? In the handkerchief that never quite touched real moisture. Next entered Dr. Felix Hartmann, the festival physician, tall and angular in rough tweed, his sandalwood cologne cutting through the wood smoke. He spoke calmly of Victor's recent strain, the long rehearsals, the late-night deciphering sessions. "I warned him the pressure would kill him," he said, hands steady. "I never imagined he would choose this way." Lucas Weber, the young violinist protege, followed. Barely 25, soft-featured, his fingers twisted the crisp linen cuffs of his dress shirt until the fabric creased. "He was like a father to me," he stammered. "We argued only yesterday, about tempo in the Strauss. But I would never—" His voice cracked convincingly. Too convincingly. Lady Beatrice Ashford, the English patroness, swept in wearing midnight blue velvet and a triple rope of pearls, where she still held a half-empty champagne flute. "A tragedy for civilization," she declared in clipped tones. Her gaze, however, darted towards the French windows, where rain now tapped softly against the panes. Last came Professor Otto Klein, the cipher expert invited to lecture on musical codes in Baroque manuscripts. Thin, bespectacled, smelling faintly of old paper and furniture wax. He adjusted his tie with precise fingers. Victor believed he had uncovered a hidden patronage code in a Mozart sketch. Dangerous knowledge, perhaps. He spoke of blackmail. Poirot arranged 3 crystal glasses on a side table in perfect symmetry. He smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve. The players had taken their places. The footlights were up. The scent of expensive perfume, wood smoke, and bitter almonds hung in the warm air. Somewhere distant, on a piano played a slow, mournful phrase. The stage was set. The actors had assembled. Let the drama begin. Chapter 2. Enter the players. The villa's library served as the first proper stage for interrogation, its walls lined with leather-bound scores and festival programs from decades past. A low fire crackled in the grate, sending wood smoke curling upward to mingle with the faint scent of furniture wax and strong continental coffee that a servant had just brought in on a silver tray. Velvet curtains had been drawn against the rain-lashed windows. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked with deliberate slowness, each chime a small punctuation in the growing tension. Hercule Poirot positioned himself behind the massive mahogany desk, arranging a fountain pen, a blotter, and 3 crystal ashtrays in perfect symmetry. He smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve and waited. The suspects would enter one by one, like actors stepping into the spotlight for their solo scenes. Eleanor Lung was first. She glided in, wearing the same black silk gown, now with a cashmere shawl draped across her shoulders against the chill that seeped through the stone walls. Her kid gloves remained on. She seated herself without waiting for invitation. The scent of Chanel No. 5 arrived before her words. "He was troubled for weeks," she began, voice low and controlled. "The Salzburg Cipher, he called it his great discovery, a hidden code in a Mozart sketch that proved a famous manuscript was a forgery. He said it would shake the entire festival world. Blackmail, he hinted. Someone wanted silence." Poirot tilted his egg-shaped head. "And yet, madame, you say he never drank Kirsch. The glass beside him carried your favorite almond cherry perfume. Yours, no?" Her fingers tightened on the lace handkerchief. "I dislike almonds. Victor must have chosen it himself." The handkerchief dabbed once, twice, perfectly dry. "Watch this performance carefully. Is it truth or theater?" Poirot made an expressive gesture with his small hands. "You were in the corridor during intermission. Many saw you. Yet no one recalls you entering the box." "I was waiting for him to join me in the foyer," she replied smoothly. "He often lingered to speak with admirers." The mask slips. Did you catch it? Her eyes flicked toward the terrace door, just for an instant. Dr. Felix Hartmann entered next. His rough tweed jacket smelled of rain and sandalwood cologne. He stood, rather than sat, her hands clasped behind his back, like a man accustomed to delivering diagnoses. "I examined the body," he said. "Cyanide, almost certainly. Fast, clean." The note was in his hand. Suicide fits the pattern. Overwork, scandal, brewing over the forgery claims, sleepless nights. Poirot leaned forward. "You prescribed him nothing for nerves? No sedative that might have been enhanced? Nothing lethal?" Hartmann's voice remained even. "I spoke with Lucas Weber in the corridor at the exact time of death. We were discussing Victor's interpretation of the Rosenkavalier trio." Poirot noted the steady gaze. Too steady. Truth stumbles. Lies flow smooth. Lucas Weber came in third, young face pale beneath the chandelier light. His fingers immediately found the crisp linen cuffs of his dress shirt and began twisting them. Silk rustled as he sat. He was like a father," Lucas repeated, voice cracking on cue. "We argued yesterday about the tempo in the final scene. He said I played too romantically. I stormed out, but I would never harm him." Poirot observed the tears that appeared promptly, glistening but never quite falling. "You were seen near the private boxes during intermission, alone." "I was looking for him, to apologize." Lucas swallowed. "I heard nothing. No cry. Nothing. Consider the psychology, mon ami. What role does this young man need to play? The devoted son, grieving, innocent? Lady Beatrice Ashford followed, still clutching her champagne flute, though it was long empty. Her midnight blue velvet gown caught the firelight. Pearls clicked softly as she moved. I funded his last 3 recordings, she declared in crisp English tones. His death is a catastrophe for the arts. He spoke to me of this cipher business, said it would make him untouchable. Instead, it destroyed him. Poirot's green eyes gleamed. You were in the ladies' retiring room during intermission, yet your program bears a small tear near the box number, as though it had been clutched too tightly. I was distressed by the heat, she said quickly. Nothing more. The careful observer, and you are becoming careful, mon ami, will notice how her foot taps once, twice, beneath the desk. Professor Otto Klein entered last, thin, precise, smelling faintly of old paper and furniture wax. He adjusted his spectacles before speaking. The Salzburg Cipher is a sequence of musical intervals embedded in a sketch page. Proof that a famous Mozart letter of patronage was forged in the 19th century. Victor intended to publish. He told me someone offered money for silence. He refused. Poirot arranged the coffee cups with geometric precision. And you, Professor, were lecturing on musical cryptology. Convenient, no? You advised him on the code itself. I merely confirmed its existence. Klein's hands remained folded calmly in his lap. I was in the lecture hall, preparing slides. Dozens saw me. But his spectacles caught the firelight at an angle that hid his eyes for a moment. Poirot rose, drawing himself up to his full, still modest, height. Mesdames et messieurs, you have each given Poirot your opening lines. Some are eloquent, some are economical with truth. He paced slowly before the desk. Rain tapped insistently at the windows. Distant piano music floated from the music room below, a slow, mournful Chopin nocturne. Their contradictions had already appeared, like missed cues in a dress rehearsal. Elna denied Kirsch, yet the scent lingered on her shawl. Hartmann's alibi depended on Lucas, yet Lucas remembered the conversation ending earlier. Lady Beatrice claimed distress from heat, yet the retiring room had been cool. Klein's calm hands betrayed nothing, nothing at all. Ask yourself, why does the widow avoid mentioning the exact time she last saw her husband? Why does the doctor insist on suicide so quickly? If you were hiding guilt, how would you perform innocence? The players had entered the stage. Each had spoken their prepared lines. But who performed truth, and who performed lies? The curtain remained up. The spotlight of truth waited to shift. Chapter 3. The first act. The rain had eased to a soft patter against the tall windows of the villa, but inside the library, the atmosphere remained thick with unspoken rehearsal. The fire had burned low, now only embers glowed, casting long shadows across the polished mahogany desk where Hercule Poirot continued his quiet orchestration. The scent of wood smoke lingered, undercut by the sharp continental coffee that had grown cold in its porcelain cups and the faint, persistent trace of almonds that seemed to haunt every room since the discovery. Poirot had requested a second, more private examination of the private box. Inspector Gruber accompanied him reluctantly, boots echoing on the now empty parquet corridors of the Festspielhaus. The theater itself felt hushed, almost reverent. The stage lights dimmed, velvet curtains motionless, crystal chandeliers silent. Yet only the chill night air slipping through the ajar terrace door reminded them this was no longer a place of performance, but of evidence. Inside the box Poirot moved with deliberate care. He noted again the silver tray, the empty Kirsch glass, the baton still gripped in Victor Lang's cold fingers when the body had been removed. On the marble ledge beside the chair lay a small half-burned scrap of paper that the police had overlooked in their haste to declare suicide. Poirot lifted it with gloved fingers. The edges were charred, but enough remained. Fragments of musical notation and a single line in elegant script. The cipher must not. The rest was ash. He turned to Gruber. This was not in the breast pocket with the suicide note. It was concealed here, beneath the cushion. Someone attempted to destroy it after the fact. Gruber frowned. A second note? Mais non. A fragment of something larger. A letter, perhaps. Or a page from the disputed Mozart sketch. Poirot's green eyes gleamed with satisfaction. He arranged the charred fragment beside the suicide note on the ledge, symmetrically, of course. Then he summoned Lucas Weber. The young violinist entered hesitantly, his dress shirt now rumpled, cuffs still bearing the creases from nervous twisting. The firelight caught the sheen of fresh sweat on his brow, despite the chill draft. You recognize this paper, no? Poirot asked, holding the fragment forward. Lucas's eyes widened. He reached instinctively, then stopped himself. I don't know. Poirot tilted his head. You were seen leaving the corridor, near this box during intermission. Your program bears the same small tear as Lady Beatrice's, clutched too tightly. And your fingers, they tremble now when they did not before. Lucas swallowed. The silence stretched, then the mask cracked. It was a letter, he whispered. From Elena, to me. It began months ago. Victor found out 2 days before he died. He confronted us both. He said he would expose it, ruin her career, end mine. I burned it here, in the grate of the box, after I found him. Poirot regarded him steadily. You found him dead, yet you paused to burn love letters. I panicked. Lucas's voice broke. Real tears now, no longer rehearsed. I thought if the police saw them, they would suspect me, or her. The first revelation hung in the warm air like smoke, a hidden affair. Motive, perhaps. But Poirot's little grey cells were not yet satisfied. He turned to the charred fragment once more. This is not your letter, mon ami, and the handwriting is different, older, more formal. This is part of the Salzburg Cipher itself. Someone else wished it destroyed. Lucas stared, confused. Poirot made an expressive gesture with his small hands. You have given Poirot truth, at least part of it. But the performance continues. I am reminded of the Ackroyd affair, many years ago in an English village. There a man performed profound shock upon hearing of murder. So convincingly that even Hercule Poirot paused. He widened his eyes, dropped his jaw, clutched his chest in perfect theatrical timing. He had rehearsed before mirrors, practiced the gasp, the stagger. Yet one detail betrayed him. When offered a cigarette to calm his nerves, his hand remained rock steady. A truly shocked man shakes. His body knows the adrenaline even when the face lies. And that small steadiness was the crack in the mask. The psychology beneath the performance is what the little grey cells understand. The body cannot lie forever. In Salzburg tonight, we see echoes of the same deception. Rehearsed calm where tremor should appear, tears that arrive too neatly. The stage may change, but the tells remain eternal. Chapter 4. Rehearsed lines. The second evening after the death brought a brittle calm to the villa. Rain had ceased. Now only the distant rush of the Salzach River filled the silence between conversations. Inside the drawing room, The fire had been rebuilt to a steady crackle, its warmth pushing back the alpine chill that clung to marble floors and velvet drapes. The scent of hothouse roses, freshly replaced that morning, competed with lingering wood smoke, strong coffee, it and the ever-present ghost of bitter almonds that refused to fade. Hercule Poirot had summoned the cast once more, this time to the long dining table laid with crisp linen napkins and untouched crystal glasses. No food would be served tonight. This was no social gathering. This was pressure applied with the precision of a conductor's baton. He stood at the head, small hands resting lightly on the polished mahogany, his green eyes moving from face to face like spotlights seeking the next cue. "We return to the scripts you have each offered, Poirot," he began, voice calm, yet carrying the weight of inevitability. "Some lines are elegant, some are economical. Tonight we test them. Truth requires no rehearsal. Lies, however, falter under repetition." He turned first to Elena Lang. She sat at his right, the black silk gown exchanged for a charcoal wool dress, pearls still gleaming coldly at her throat. Her kid gloves lay folded beside her coffee cup. "Madame, you insist your husband never drank Kirsch. Yet the bottle on the tray bore a label from a small Austrian distillery. Special order, delivered to this villa 3 days before his death. The delivery note is signed in your hand." Elena's lips tightened. "I ordered it for a guest. I did not know Victor would drink it." Poirot tilted his egg-shaped head. "A guest who never arrived. And the glass, lipstick residue, matches the shade you wore that evening. Chanel Rouge Noir. You sipped from it, no?" Her fingers brushed the coffee cup, then withdrew. "I tasted it when I found him, to be certain." The mask strained visibly now. Her shoulders, once shaking with rehearsed grief, remained rigid. "Now observe, mon ami. This performance grows brittle. The lines are wearing thin." Poirot moved to Dr. Felix Hartmann. The physician sat straighter, tweed jacket buttoned as though armor. Sandalwood cologne mixed with the fire's warmth. "Your alibi, doctor. You claim conversation with Lucas Weber in the corridor from precisely 9:12 to 9:28, the window of death. Yet the usher, who passed you both at 9:20, recalls only you, standing alone, checking your watch. Lucas had already moved toward the stairs." Hartmann's jaw tightened. "The usher is mistaken. Memory plays tricks in distress. Mais non. Memory plays tricks when lines are rehearsed." Poirot made a small expressive gesture. "You prescribed Victor a mild sedative, phenobarbital, 2 weeks ago. A bottle is missing from your medical bag. Enough grains to mask cyanide taste in liqueur." Hartmann exhaled sharply. "I gave him the last dose myself. He took it. Yet no trace in autopsy blood beyond the poison. Curious, no?" The doctor's steady hands, those famous steady hands, finally showed the faintest tremor as he reached for his coffee. Lucas Weber came next under the spotlight. The young violinist's face had lost its rehearsed pallor. Now genuine fear flickered in his eyes. "You burned a letter in the box grate," Poirot said gently. "Yet ash analysis shows 2 different inks. One fresh, one older. The older ink matches the fragment Poirot found. You did not burn only your love letter. You burned part of the Salzburg Cipher page itself." Lucas shook his head violently. "I swear, I only burned Elena's note. I never touched anything else." "Then who did, mon ami? Who entered the box after you fled and before the body was discovered?" Lucas's mouth opened, closed. No answer came. His rehearsed devotion cracked into something raw, confusion, perhaps complicity. Lady Beatrice Ashford performed her British composure with visible effort. Her champagne flute had been replaced by black coffee. She stirred it unnecessarily. You funded Victor's recordings, Poirot continued. Yet your bank statements, obtained this afternoon, show large transfers to an account in Vienna, the same account that received payments from a suspected art forger last year. The Mozart sketch in question. Beatrice set the spoon down with a soft clink. Charitable donations, nothing more. Charity that coincides precisely with Victor's discovery of the forgery. You paid for silence, Lady Beatrice. Then, when he refused to stay silent, the silence had to be permanent. Her foot tapped once beneath the table, once only, then stilled. The performance of indifference was fraying at the seams. Finally, Professor Otto Klein. He sat last, spectacles reflecting firelight, hands folded with deliberate calm. You lectured on musical cryptology, Poirot said. You confirmed the cipher's authenticity for Victor. Yet your own published monograph from 1948 contains passages identical, word for word, to the disputed Mozart letter. A clever echo, known, or a careful forgery of scholarship? Klein adjusted his spectacles. Academic coincidence. Ideas circulate. Coincidence that your fingerprints were found on the Kirsch bottle. Inside the label, where no casual handler would touch. Poirot paused. You handled it before delivery. Or you knew its destination. For the first time, Klein's calm faltered. One finger tapped the table, once, twice, then stopped as though he realized the tell. Poirot drew himself up, still small, yet commanding the room. Rehearsed lines, mesdames et messieurs, begin to falter when the audience asks the same question twice. When the spotlight lingers, when the body betrays what the mouth denies. He paced slowly along the table. Crystal tinkled overhead as a draft moved the chandelier. Rain had returned, tapping insistently at the windows like impatient applause. The alibis had been tested, the scripts strained. False performances stood exposed in small, fatal hesitations. A tremor, a too quick denial, a finger tapping when it should have stayed still. You see, but you do not observe how the masks grow heavy. No? Unask yourself, which of these actors has rehearsed so perfectly that any deviation now shows like a tear in silk? The tension coils tighter. The final act approaches. Truth needs no rehearsal, but lies cannot bear repetition forever. Rehearsed lines began to falter. The script was failing. Chapter 5. The Mask Slips. The third morning dawned cold and clear over Salzburg. Sunlight sliced through tall windows of the villa's music room, catching motes of dust above the polished grand piano. The instrument stood silent now. No distant nocturnes. Only the soft creak of floorboards under nervous footsteps, and the occasional chime of the grandfather clock marking time like a patient stage manager. Fresh, hothouse lilies had been placed on the mantel, and their sweet scent clashed with the lingering trace of bitter almonds that still haunted every closed space. Hercule Poirot had chosen this room deliberately. It was Victor Lang's private sanctuary. Sheet music scattered across the lid, a conductor's score of Der Rosenkavalier open at the final trio. Victor's own annotations in red pencil fading at the edges. Here the masks would be hardest to maintain. Here the dead man's presence lingered most strongly. He summoned only one suspect this time. Eleanor Lang entered alone. She wore a simple grey wool dress, no pearls today, no kid gloves. Her face was pale, lips unpainted. For the first time since the discovery, she looked almost ordinary, almost human. She paused just inside the doorway, as though crossing an invisible proscenium line. Poirot stood beside the piano, his small hands clasped behind his back. He tilted his egg-shaped head and spoke softly. Madame, the performance has been admirable. Grief played with perfect restraint. The dry handkerchief, the measured sobs, the composed widow who orders champagne even as her husband lies dead in the next room. But now we come to the final scene, the one you cannot rehearse. Elena's chin lifted. I have told you everything. Mais non. You have told Poirot the lines you prepared. Tonight, we discard the script. He gestured to the open score on the piano. Your husband marked this page the day before he died. See here, beside the trio, he wrote one word in red. Elena. Not a musical note. A name. A question. A betrayal. Her breath caught. Small, sharp, audible in the quiet room. She stepped forward involuntarily, then stopped. Poirot continued, in voice gentle yet inexorable. The affair with Lucas Weber began as passion. Then it became convenience. Then it became danger. Victor discovered the letters. He confronted you both. He threatened exposure, not merely scandal, but the end of your career. You who once commanded these very stages with your voice, reduced to whispers in drawing rooms. You could not bear it. Eleanor's hands clenched at her sides. You know nothing of love. Love. Poirot's green eyes gleamed. Love does not poison a glass of kirsch. Love does not arrange a suicide note in a dead man's pocket. Love does not burn fragments of evidence while the body is still warm. She took another step. The silk of her dress rustled faintly, less graceful now, more desperate. You think I killed him? Her voice cracked on the last word. Real emotion at last, raw and jagged. And I think you wished him gone, Poirot replied. I think you planned with someone. But the hand that poured the cyanide was not yours alone. Yet the mask you wear, the grieving wife, the betrayed artist, it slips now. See? Your hands tremble. Your eyes are wet. Not from grief, but from fear. Genuine fear. The performance is ending. Elena reached the piano. Her fingers brushed the open page, then curled into fists. For a long moment, she stood motionless. Then the mask shattered. I hated him, she whispered. The words came out like something long strangled. He owned me. My voice, my career, my life. He controlled it all. When the cipher threatened his reputation, he blamed me. Said I had distracted him, ruined his concentration. He said he would destroy everything I had left. I wanted him silent. I wanted him gone. Tears came now. Real. A messy, streaking mascara she had not worn since the first night. Her shoulders shook, not with theatrical precision, but with the ugly rhythm of genuine collapse. But I did not kill him, she said fiercely. I could not. I thought of it. God help me. I thought of it every night. But the poison, I never touched it. Poirot regarded her steadily. Then who did, madame? Who slipped the cyanide into the glass while you waited in the corridor? Who wrote the suicide note in your husband's hand after he was already dead? Elna sank onto the piano bench. The wood creaked under her. She covered her face with both hands. When she spoke again, her voice was small, almost childlike. Lucas, he said he would handle it. He said he would speak to Victor one last time. Make him see reason. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. Poirot touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully. And the doctor, the professor, Lady Beatrice? I don't know. She looked up, eyes red-rimmed. They all had reasons. Victor had dirt on everyone. The cipher wasn't just forgery. It was leverage, money, reputation, secrets. He played us all like an orchestra. And when one instrument refused to play in tune, she trailed off. Silence filled the music room again, broken only by the soft tick of the clock and the distant murmur of the river. Poirot made a small, expressive gesture with his hands. The mask has fallen, madame. Beneath it, the true face at last. Hatred masquerading as love. Relief masquerading as grief. You have given Poirot truth. Painful truth, but necessary. Eleanor stared at the open score and at the red inked Elena that now seemed like an accusation from beyond the grave. You will tell the police? She asked dully. Poirot tells only what must be told. The rest, the psychology, the motive, the performance, he keeps for the final act. He turned toward the window. Sunlight caught the crystal pendant of the chandelier, sending small rainbows dancing across the walls. The major confrontation had come. The mask had fallen completely. Beneath it lay not the elegant soprano, not the grieving widow, but a woman stripped of role, raw, frightened, human. The mask had fallen. Chapter 6. Behind the curtain. Late afternoon, light slanted through the villa's tall windows, turning the drawing room golden and long-shadowed. The fire had been allowed to die to embers. Only a faint warmth remained, mingling with the scent of cooling coffee, wilting hothouse roses, and the ever-present whisper of almonds that clung to the upholstery like an accusation. Outside, the Salzburg River caught the sun in silver flashes, indifferent to the drama unfolding within these walls. Hercule Poirot had drawn the heavy velvet curtains halfway, creating pockets of shadow where secrets might feel safer to emerge. He no longer summoned the entire cast. Instead, he had requested private conversations, short, sharp scenes played out in corners of the room, away from the long dining table that had become too public a stage. First came Dr. Felix Hartmann. He entered without knocking, tweed jacket unbuttoned now, sandalwood cologne sharper in the confined air. He stopped near the fireplace, hands in pockets. You already know about the phenobarbital, he said, before Poirot could speak. I prescribed it. No, Victor took it irregularly. But the bottle that vanished from my bag, I did not take it back. Someone did. Poirot arranged 2 crystal glasses on a side table, aligning them with geometric precision. Someone who knew your medical bag sat unguarded in the anteroom during intermission, someone who understood dosages, and someone who wished the taste of cyanide masked. Hartmann exhaled. Victor was blackmailing me, not with money, with my past. A medical error years ago, hushed up. He held the proof. When the cipher surfaced, he threatened to release it, unless I assisted him in certain matters. Assisted how? Falsifying records, declaring the disputed Mozart sketch authentic when I knew nothing of musicology. I refused. He grew angry, said he would ruin me. The doctor's voice remained level, but his fingers drummed once against his thigh, once only, before he forced them still. Next entered Lady Beatrice Ashford. She carried no champagne flute today. Her hands were empty, knuckles white. Velvet had given way to a plain tweed suit, pearls replaced by a simple gold chain. The transfers to Vienna, she said without preamble. They were payments to silence a forger. Not my forger, Victor's. He commissioned the Mozart letter himself years ago to inflate the value of his collection. When the cipher threatened to expose it, he demanded I cover the losses. I paid. Then he demanded more. Poirot tilted his head. And when he refused to stop, I considered drastic measures. But I did not act. I waited. Someone else acted first. Her gaze drifted to the half-drawn curtains, where a sliver of terrace was visible, cold marble, and the same terrace door that had stood ajar on the night of death. Professor Otto Klein arrived last. He carried a slim leather portfolio under one arm. No spectacles today. His eyes looked smaller, more vulnerable without them. "The monograph," he began quietly. "You were correct. Passages were lifted, deliberately, from the forged Mozart letter. Victor knew. He paid me to authenticate the cipher publicly, to make his own forgery appear legitimate by contrast. When I hesitated, he threatened exposure of my borrowings." Poirot smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve. "And the fingerprints on the Kirsch bottle. I handled it. Victor asked me to deliver it personally. Said it was a gift for a patron. I did not know it had been tampered with until after." Klein set the portfolio on the table, and inside lay photocopies of musical fragments, intervals, notations, the Salzburg Cipher itself. "Victor planned to publish," he said, "not to expose forgery, to profit from it. He would sell rediscovered, authentic manuscripts, using the cipher as proof. Everyone here was implicated: my scholarship, Hartmann's medical cover, Beatrice's money, Eleanor's silence, Lucas's loyalty. We were all backstage players in his private production." Poirot opened the portfolio, studying the notations. "Behind every curtain, a secret," he murmured. "Behind every secret, a motive." Reflection, approximately 250 words. Humans hide because exposure is unbearable. Motives are rarely simple. They are layered performances, one mask behind another. Greed wears the costume of scholarly curiosity. Fear dresses as loyalty. Resentment performs as devotion. In this Salzburg theater, every actor believed their backstage role was invisible. Yet each left traces: a missing sedative bottle, a forged monograph, payments disguised as patronage, love letters half burned. We conceal not merely the act, but the why. The why is uglier, pride wounded, ambition thwarted, love soured into possession. Victor Lang did not die because one person hated him. He died because many needed him silenced. The psychology is relentless. When a man holds too many secrets, the weight becomes collective. Each conspirator tells himself, "If I do nothing, someone else will." And so the poison is poured, the note forged, the curtain drawn, by hands that never quite touch. Yet the body betrays. A finger taps, a handkerchief stays dry. A gaze lingers on the terrace door. Hidden motives do not vanish. They fester, and they emerge in small, unscripted moments when the performance falters. Truth does not need to hide. Lies do. And lies eventually exhaust their actors. The revelations had come swiftly, like scene changes in the final act. Connections lay exposed, blackmail threads linking every suspect to Victor's scheme. The cipher was no noble discovery. It was currency in a private economy of deceit. Poirot closed the portfolio with a soft snap. He drew himself up, small yet unyielding. "Behind the curtain," he said to the empty room, "we find not one villain but a chorus of complicity. The performance was collective. The guilt, however, will rest on one pair of hands." Outside, the river murmured on. Inside, the embers glowed faintly. Behind every curtain, a secret. Behind every secret, a motive. Chapter 7. The Final Act. The Festspielhaus stage had been cleared of scenery. Only the black velvet backdrop remained, lit by a single stark spotlight that cast long shadows across the polished floorboards. Rows of empty seats stretched into darkness. The crystal chandeliers above were dimmed, their tinkling silenced. A faint scent of hot house lilies lingered from yesterday's tributes, undercut by wood smoke from the small fire that had been lit in the orchestra pit for warmth against the mountain chill. The grandfather clock in the foyer chimed once, distant and solemn, as the cast assembled. Hercule Poirot stood center stage, small and immaculate in his evening dress, hands clasped behind his back. He had requested, no, directed, that they all come here to the heart of the theatre where Victor Lang had conducted his last performance. On no police flanked them tonight. This was Poirot's curtain call. The suspects entered one by one, stepping into the pool of light like actors answering a final call. Elena Lang first, in plain black wool, no gloves, no pearls, face stripped of makeup, eyes still red from yesterday's collapse. Dr. Felix Hartmann followed, tweed replaced by a dark suit, hands no longer steady. Lucas Weber came next, young shoulders hunched, fingers twitching at his cuffs. Lady Beatrice Ashford entered with measured steps, velvet gone, tweed, practical and severe. Professor Otto Klein was last, portfolio under his arm, spectacles catching the spotlight like twin moons. Poirot waited until all five stood in a loose semicircle before him. He drew himself up, still small, yet filling the stage. Mesdames et messieurs, he began, a voice carrying effortlessly to the empty balcony. You have each performed for Hercule Poirot, some truthfully, some not. Tonight we review the performances. No more rehearsals, no more missed cues. The spotlight of truth shines. Let us see who forgets their lines. He turned first to Elena. Madame Lang, you played the grieving widow, with exquisite restraint. The dry handkerchief, the elegant sobs. Bravo. Yet beneath the costume was hatred. Long rehearsed, perfectly timed. You wished him gone. You planned with another. But the hand that poured was not yours. Eleanor's chin lifted, but she said nothing. Poirot moved to Hartmann. Doctor, you performed the calm physician, the loyal friend. You spoke of suicide with medical certainty. Yet you supplied the sedative that masked the cyanide. You knew the dose. You stood in the corridor alone when Lucas left. Your steady hands, too steady, betrayed prior knowledge. Hartmann's jaw clenched. One hand rose, then fell. Next, Lucas Weber. Young man, you played the devoted protégé, the heartbroken son. Tears arrived on cue. Yet you burned evidence in the box grate. You carried guilt like a poorly tuned violin, sharp, discordant. You acted, yes, but not alone. Lucas whispered, I only wanted to protect her. Poirot raised a small hand. We come to Lady Beatrice. The Englishwoman met his gaze without flinching. You performed the generous patroness, the shocked bystander. Yet your money funded the forgeries Victor profited from. When he demanded more, you considered drastic silence. Your foot tapped beneath the table, once, twice, a rhythm of suppressed rage. Beatrice exhaled slowly. I paid. I did not kill. Enfin, Poirot said softly, turning to the last figure. Professor Otto Klein. Klein stood motionless, portfolio clutched like a shield. You gave the most convincing performance of all. The scholarly expert, calm, precise, helpful. You lectured on codes while forging your own scholarship. You handled the Kirsch bottle before delivery. Your fingerprints were inside the label, where only one who prepared it would touch. You confirmed the cipher's authenticity to protect your own borrowings. And when Victor threatened to expose you, to end your career, You acted. Poirot stepped closer. The spotlight caught the gleam in his green eyes. You made one error, Professor. One small, fatal moment when the mask slipped. In every interview, in every confrontation, your hands never trembled. Not once. And the others shook. Eleanor when confronted, Hartman when pressed, Lucas when confessing, Beatrice when accused. Fear makes the body tremble. Guilt makes it tremble. But you? Rock steady. Only a man who had rehearsed every gesture, who knew exactly when death would come, who had already calculated the outcome. Only such a man remains, perfectly still. Klein's spectacles glinted. For the first time, his fingers loosened on the portfolio. Paper slipped, one page fluttering to the floorboards. A photocopy of the Salzburg Cipher, intervals marked in red. You poisoned the liqueur, Poirot continued. You delivered it yourself. You wrote the suicide note, afterward, in Victor's hand, using the same red pencil he used for scores. You burned the remaining cipher fragment in the grate after Lucas fled. You performed innocence so perfectly that innocence itself became suspicious. Silence fell, heavy as velvet. Poirot raised both hands in a final theatrical gesture. The performance is over. The curtain falls. The truth, she takes her bow. He turned to the empty auditorium, as though addressing an invisible audience. Professor Otto Klein, you are the leading player in this tragedy. The murderer. Klein did not move. Then, slowly, he removed his spectacles, folded them, placed them in his breast pocket. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, almost relieved. He would have destroyed us all, one by one. I chose efficiency. Poirot nodded once. Efficiency without tremor. That was your tell. He stepped back. The spotlight widened, bathing the entire stage in cold white light. The cast stood frozen, some weeping, some staring, one exposed. On the final act concluded. Only truth survived the curtain call. Chapter 8. Curtain Call. The Festspiel house emptied slowly after the revelation. Footsteps echoed down the marble corridors, hesitant, uneven, no longer the confident tread of performers taking their bows. The single spotlight had been extinguished. Now only the soft amber glow of wall sconces remained, casting long shadows across velvet seats and polished parquet. Outside, the alpine night pressed cold against the tall windows, rain beginning again in a soft, relentless patter. Inside, the scent of dying lilies mingled with spent wood smoke from the orchestra pit fire and the faint final trace of bitter almonds that would never quite leave the building. Hercule Poirot remained on the stage a moment longer. Alone now that the cast had dispersed under police escort, he adjusted his white tie with precision, smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve, and surveyed the empty auditorium as though waiting for one last curtain call that would never come. No applause followed this performance. Only the quiet rustle of silk as Elena Lang was led away in handcuffs for questioning as accessory. The low murmur of Dr. Hartman giving a formal statement to Inspector Gruber, the young violinist Lucas Weber weeping openly against a pillar, while a constable waited patiently beside him. Lady Beatrice Ashford had been the first to leave the stage. She walked with the rigid dignity of one who has played her final scene and knows the reviews will be merciless. Her tweed suit seemed suddenly too large for her frame. The gold chain at her throat caught the sconce light once, and then vanished into shadow as she passed through the double doors. She would face charges of conspiracy and fraud. Her payments to Vienna now evidence rather than charity. No more patroness of the arts. Only a woman stripped of role, facing the audience of justice without script or mask. Professor Otto Klein had not resisted. When the police stepped forward after Poirot's final words, he merely nodded once, as though acknowledging the end of a long rehearsal. His portfolio remained on the floorboards where it had fallen. No one touched it. He allowed the cuffs to be placed without tremor, those famous steady hands now limp at his sides. As he was led away, he paused only once, glancing back at Poirot. No words passed between them, only a small, almost imperceptible inclination of the head. Acknowledgement, perhaps, in that the performance had been seen through to its logical close. In the green drawing room of the villa, where so many scenes had been played, the aftermath unfolded in fragments. Servants moved quietly, clearing coffee cups and straightening cushions, their footsteps soft on the rugs. The grandfather clock chimed the half-hour. Its measured toll seemed louder now, unaccompanied by voices or music. Eleanor Lang sat on the edge of a velvet sofa, hands clasped in her lap. No gloves tonight, no Chanel. Her mascara had dried in faint streaks down her cheeks, remnants of the real tears that had replaced the rehearsed ones. She looked smaller without the role of grieving widow to sustain her. When a constable approached to escort her for formal statement, she rose without protest. "I did not pour the poison," she said quietly, more to herself than to anyone. "But I wished it. That is enough." Her voice held no drama now, only exhaustion. The soprano who once commanded stages would face trial as conspirator. Her future, if any, would be lived in whispers rather than spotlights. Lucas Weber remained in the corridor outside, leaning against cool marble, face buried in his hands. His cuffs were torn where he had twisted them. Threads hung loose like unfinished lines of music. A young policewoman offered him water in a crystal glass. He accepted it without looking up. His confession had been halting, tear-choked. He had burned the letters, yes. He had confronted Victor, yes. But the cyanide, he swore it had not been his hand. Poirot had believed him on that point. The boy would be charged with evidence, tampering, and perhaps accessory after the fact. In his career as rising violinist was over before it truly began. Yet in the wreckage, something genuine flickered, grief, unscripted, for a man he had once called father. Dr. Hartmann stood by the French windows, staring out at the rain-slicked terrace where death had entered so quietly. His tweed jacket hung open. The sandalwood cologne had faded, replaced by the sharp smell of nervous sweat. He had already dictated his statement, admitting the missing sedative, the blackmail, the refusal to act. He would lose his license, his practice, his standing among the festival elite. Yet he spoke to the inspector with weary candor. "I treated his symptoms for years. In the end, I failed to treat the disease, his need to control every soul around him." No tremor in his voice now, only resignation. The calm physician had become the patient. Yet Lady Beatrice had been driven back to her hotel under guard. She sat alone in the back of the police car, gazing at the passing lights of Salzburg without seeing them. Her pearls had been left behind on the drawing room table, strands of moonlight caught in a careless heap. No one had thought to return them yet. She would face extradition proceedings. The forgeries she funded would unravel in courtrooms far from these elegant stages. The patroness who once bought culture with silence would now purchase nothing but time. Poirot stepped down from the stage at last. He walked slowly through the auditorium, past rows of seats still warm from absent bodies. At the foyer doors he paused, turning once to look back at the darkened proscenium. The velvet curtains hung motionless. No encore would be called tonight, and he touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully, then pushed through the doors into the chill night air. Rain touched his face, cold, cleansing. Somewhere distant, a piano played a single slow phrase from Mozart, then fell silent. The curtain call came. No applause followed this performance, only justice. Chapter 9. After the show. Dawn broke pale and reluctant over Salzburg. The festival banners still fluttered limply from lampposts along the river, their colors muted by overnight rain. The Festspielhaus stood silent now, its great doors locked, the marquee lights extinguished. Inside the villa, servants moved with hushed efficiency, stripping beds, folding linens, carrying away the last wilting lilies, whose scent had turned faintly sour. The grandfather clock in the foyer ticked on, indifferent to the emptied rooms. Hercule Poirot sat alone at the small breakfast table in the sunroom. A pot of strong continental coffee steamed beside him. Beside it, a single crystal glass of iced water waited untouched. He wore his usual impeccable suit, tie knotted with precision, yet something in his posture spoke of quiet aftermath rather than active direction. The performance had closed. Now came the slow business of watching what remained when the masks were gone and the curtain stored away. News arrived piecemeal throughout the morning, carried by Inspector Gruber in a brief, formal visit. The professor, Otto Klein, had confessed fully in the police station during the night. No tremor in his voice, Gruber reported. Only calm recitation of dates, dosages, motives. He had mixed the cyanide into the Kirsch bottle 2 days before delivery, using a fine syringe borrowed from Hartmann's medical kit. The suicide note had been forged in Victor's own study the previous afternoon, using red pencil lifted from the conductor's score table. Klein had anticipated every question, answered without hesitation. He asked only one favor, that his monograph be preserved in some archive, for the record of scholarship, however flawed. Gruber shook his head. A man who kills for reputation still clings to reputation at the end. Helena Lang remained under house arrest in a smaller hotel room across the river. She had refused visitors, even Lucas. Yet a single letter had arrived for Poirot that morning, delivered by a trembling bellboy. In elegant, slightly unsteady script, she wrote, "I performed love for 20 years. When it became possession, I performed hatred instead. Neither was true, and the truth is quieter. I am tired. If the courts allow, I will return to teaching, small classes, no spotlights. Perhaps silence will suit me better than song." Poirot folded the letter carefully and placed it beside his coffee cup. He touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully. Transformation had begun, however haltingly. Lucas Weber had been released on bail shortly before dawn. He appeared at the villa gates just after 8, coat collar turned up against the chill, violin case clutched in both hands like a child's toy he no longer understood. A constable had accompanied him to collect belongings. He did not enter the drawing room where so many scenes had played. Instead, he stood on the terrace, staring at the Salzach. Poirot joined him there. The marble was still damp from rain. Cold seeped through thin soles. Lucas did not look up when Poirot spoke. "I will not play again," the young man said quietly. "Not professionally. The sound reminds me of him, of what I did not stop." Poirot regarded the river, its surface silver under weak sunlight. "You burned letters. You burned evidence. You did not burn a man. The poison was not yours." Yet I wished him gone. Lucas's voice cracked, real, unperformed. I thought if he disappeared, Eleanor and I could begin cleanly. Instead, everything ended. Poirot made a small gesture with his hands. Guilt is not erased by acquittal, mon ami, but it can be carried differently. You are young. The violin case you hold, it need not remain a burden. Perhaps one day it becomes a bridge instead. Lucas exhaled a shaky breath. I am going back to Vienna. Small orchestra. Teaching, maybe. No festivals. No spotlights. He turned then, meeting Poirot's eyes for the first time. No tears today, only clarity. Hard won. He offered his hand. Poirot took it, small fingers firm against the younger man's trembling grip. Dr. Hartmann had already departed by private car at first light. His practice would close, his license suspended pending inquiry. Yet he had left a brief note for Poirot, pinned beneath a coffee cup in the library. I treated symptoms, never causes. Victor's disease was control. Mine was cowardice. I go now to a clinic in Switzerland, not as physician, but as patient. Recovery is slower than diagnosis, but it begins. Lady Beatrice Ashford's hotel suite stood empty by noon. She had taken the morning train to Zurich, then onward to London under police supervision. Her luggage, 3 steamer trunks of gowns, pearls, programs remained behind to be shipped later. A single item had been left on the hall table, the triple rope of pearls from the first night, coiled neatly in their velvet box. No note accompanied them. Only the quiet statement of a woman who no longer needed their weight. Poirot lifted the box, opened it. The pearls caught the pale sunlight, cool and luminous. He closed the lid again and placed it beside the letter from Eleanor. Symbols, perhaps, of roles discarded. The villa grew quieter still. Servants finished their tasks. Suitcases lined the foyer. By early afternoon, only Poirot remained in the sunroom, coffee now cold, water glass sweating gently. He rose, walked to the window. The Alps stood sharp against a clearing sky. The river flowed on, unconcerned. Transformations had begun, not dramatic, not theatrical, but real. A soprano seeking silence, a protege choosing modesty, a doctor facing his own illness, a patroness surrendering adornment, a murderer accepting judgment without defense. The theater had emptied. The actors had departed, carrying their new, unscripted lives. But the lessons lingered, small, persistent, like the faint echo of a piano phrase played once and never repeated. The theater emptied. The lessons remained. Chapter 10. Poirot reviews the performance. The Orient Express hummed through the late afternoon countryside of Austria, its rhythm steady and comforting after the jagged drama of Salzburg. Hercule Poirot occupied his usual compartment, small, elegant, immaculately ordered. A single lamp cast warm light across the polished mahogany table, where a pot of design steamed gently beside a crystal glass of iced water. Outside the window, the Alps receded slowly, their peaks softened by distance and evening haze. Inside, the faint scent of bergamot from the tisane mingled with the leather of the seat and the crisp linen of Poirot's napkin. He had opened the small leather notebook in which he recorded observations during cases. Today, however, he wrote nothing. Instead, he sat back, touching his magnificent moustache thoughtfully, and allowed the little grey cells to review the entire production one final time. The newspapers had already carried the essentials. Professor Otto Klein arrested for murder, cyanide in the Kirsch, forged suicide note, motive rooted in blackmail, and scholarly reputation. Elna Long charged as accessory before the fact. Lucas Weber fined for evidence, tampering, released on probation. Doctor, a Hartmann's license revoked pending full inquiry. Lady Beatrice facing extradition and fraud proceedings. The Salzburg festival would continue. Proust, quieter, but continue. Art, after all, outlives its performers. Poirot sipped the tisane. Hot, fragrant, perfectly balanced. He considered why people perform rather than reveal truth. It is fear, first and always. Fear of judgment, fear of loss, fear of the naked self beneath the costume. Society writes the script. The widow must grieve elegantly. The protégé must show devotion. The scholar must appear detached and wise. To step out of role is to risk exile. So they rehearse. Every gesture, every sigh, every tremor, carefully timed. Yet the body knows. Guilt betrays itself in the smallest inconsistencies. A handkerchief too dry, hands too steady, knees that avoid the terrace door where poison once entered. In this case, the masks had been particularly elaborate. Klein's calm was not composure. It was rehearsal, carried to perfection. He had practiced stillness while others practiced tears. That absence of tremor, when every other suspect shook under pressure, became the loudest tell of all. The psychology of revelation is simple. Truth emerges not because it is shouted, but because lies grow heavy. The actor tires, the mask slips, the curtain falls of its own weight. I am reminded of the case of Roger Ackroyd, many years ago in an English village. There, too, a man performed innocence with flawless technique. He wept at the right moments, offered help at every turn, spoke of loyalty with convincing warmth. Yet one detail undid him. When the body was discovered, he reached for his pipe with fingers rock steady. A truly shocked man fumbles. His hands know the adrenaline before his mind admits it. Klein's steadiness echoed that same betrayal. He knew death was coming because he had arranged it. The body cannot lie when the mind has already accepted the script's ending. Poirot set the cup down with precision. He considered the masks society demands. We wear them from childhood. Politeness over anger, ambition masked as humility, love disguised as indifference. In Salzburg, the masks were gilded by art, music, scholarship, patronage. Victor Lang had exploited them all, turning human weakness into currency. He collected secrets the way another collects scores, until the collection grew too heavy, and someone chose murder to lighten the load. Guilt always betrays the actor. It manifests in the unscripted moment. Eleanor's real tears when the mask finally shattered. Lucas's torn cuffs. Hartmann's single drum of fingers. Beatrice's abandoned pearls. Even Klein, in the end, removed his spectacles. A small human gesture that said the performance was over. Truth triumphs because lies are exhausting. They require constant maintenance, every line remembered, every gesture controlled. Truth needs only to exist. Poirot arranged the notebook, the tisane pot, the water glass in perfect symmetry on the table. He reflected on the psychology of the entire cast. Eleanor had worn hatred as love until hatred became unbearable. Lucas had worn devotion until it choked him. Hartmann had worn calm until it cracked into cowardice. Beatrice had worn generosity until it revealed calculation. The Klein had worn scholarship until it exposed murder. Each believed their role concealed them. None remembered that the audience, Hercule Poirot, watches not the lines spoken, but the silences between them. The train slowed as it approached a tunnel. Darkness slid across the window like a final curtain. Poirot smiled faintly. The theater of crime is never truly empty. New actors take the stage. New masks are donned. Yet the lessons endure. Order and method reveal what passion conceals. The little inconsistencies speak louder than grand gestures, and truth, patient and unhurried, waits for the moment when rehearsal fails. He rose, drew the blind halfway against the gathering dusk. The compartment grew cozier, the lamp's glow warmer. Somewhere ahead lay Paris, then perhaps Brussels, then home. Another case closed, another performance reviewed. Until the next theater of crime, mes amis, Poirot will be watching,